Bob's Burgers and Thanksgiving episodes. A pair as perfect as turkey and stuffing, gravy and mashed potatoes, holiday dinners and political arguments with your weirdest uncle. As I covered previously with their Halloween episodes, Bob's Burgers is just top tier when it comes to holiday-themed episodes. But the creme de la creme, at least according to the majority of the fan base, are the Thanksgiving episodes. And when you really dive into what makes this show special, I think the reason for that is pretty clear. So for the holiday this year, I wanted to lay down exactly why I'm so thankful for Bob's Burgers Thanksgiving episodes.
Yes, the cranberry sauce we're having mashed potatoes.
Hey, this video is brought to you by two things today. One is my official compilation channel, Johnny Too Cozy, where I'm re-editing tons of my old videos into themed compilations, long videos that are great for sleeping or drawing. And second, my wonderful patrons who get tons of extra content exclusive to Patreon. We're currently in the middle of season 2 of our BoJack Horseman audio commentaries. Check those out if they interest you. Thank you so much for your support. I couldn't do it without viewers like you. Over the past 15 seasons, Bob's Burgers has released 11 Thanksgiving episodes. For some reason, they've actually skipped out on the past couple seasons, which is unusual, but hopefully that means they'll just come back with a really strong entry next year. Much like the Halloween episodes, fans absolutely love Bob's Thanksgiving episodes, probably most out of all of their holiday-themed episodes, which is saying a lot. And after watching all 11 of these stories back to back, it's clear to me exactly why Bob's most celebrated holiday episodes take place on Turkey Day. Thanksgiving is the holiday that most perfectly embodies the things that make Bob's Burgers a great show. It is a major food-based holiday that focuses on family coming together and being there for each other. Is there anything more perfectly representative of Bob's Burgers? It is a perfect circumstance to create familial conflicts, food-based humor, and of course to showcase Bob's obsessive food-based tendencies run amok. Not to mention the series has established some incredibly funny running bits over the course of these 11 episodes, and they really just get funnier each and every year. One might even call them Thanksgiving traditions. So let's get into Bob's first Thanksgiving episode from season 3.
Thanking us for thanking you.
Sled.
Kill the turkey.
Bob's very first Thanksgiving episode wastes no time establishing some of the most important through lines across their Turkey Day stories, immediately opening on what would become their first yearly tradition, Bob talking to and responding as the turkey he plans to cook.
Hey Bob, what about me?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't see you there.
The first thing they make sure to focus on is that Thanksgiving is super important to Bob. It's his absolute favorite holiday, and given the focus on family and food, that totally tracks. But Bob takes this maybe a little far with his borderline creepy obsession with his turkeys.
I hope he waits to get it home before he stuffs it.
But it also establishes that Bob doesn't really realize that he's the only one in the family who is this into Thanksgiving. He sort of transposes his own obsession onto his family and then gets a hard dose of reality.
Check the rankings. It goes my birthday, Christmas, Halloween,
Easter,
Hanukkah.
snow day, amateur night.
Okay, that's
Veterans
first.
Day.
And that sets the stage for a really perfect Bob's Burgers Thanksgiving dilemma. Mr. Fishoder makes a ridiculous proposition to the Belchers for Linda and the kids to play act as his own family because he's trying to woo a woman who only shows interest when she's a homewrecker. Linda loves acting, the kids think it sounds fun, and none of them care about Thanksgiving as much as Bob.
Now, our job tonight is to fool the woman of my dreams into believing that we are a loving, happy, nuclear family that she can destroy.
Bob would tag along as their chef and prepare their Thanksgiving meal, and in exchange, the Belchers would receive 5 months of free rent. Now, you can probably see why this is a perfect Bob's plot. The Belchers own a struggling business, and so this is basically an offer that Bob cannot refuse. 5 months rent is a lot of money, so Bob is forced to give up something that is incredibly important to him so they can continue to make ends meet. Additionally, it's a proposal that not only separates Bob from his family, but also forces them into roles where they have to actively ignore the family traditions that are so important to Bob. It is an absolutely bizarre scenario, but it so perfectly eats into Bob's insecurities while also exacerbating the Belchers' biggest issues. Pitch perfect crafting of a silly circumstance. And en route, they establish what would become another amazing Bob's giving tradition, Linda singing silly Thanksgiving songs.
No.
Yes, the cranberry sauce we're having mashed potatoes.
I know I also played that clip in the intro, but it is too good not to play again. Even though Bob agrees to this entire Thanksgiving charade, he's still fully intent on secretly having a Belcher family Thanksgiving within the fake one. Sadly, Mr. Fischoder's gamification of the charade prevents the Belcher kids from caring about this at all. They all brush off their holiday traditions with Bob, leaving him alone to drink absinthe and talk to his turkey.
Remember, Bob, it's all an act.
Thanks, Lance. You've been my rock through all this. I love you.
This does, however, lead to what is easily one of my favorite sequences in all of Bob's Burgers history. Bob dreams/hallucinates an incredibly faithful parody of the My Neighbor Totoro tree-growing dream sequence. Honestly, a ridiculously ambitious thing to animate in the Bob's Burgers art style, and while obviously nothing is going to look as good as the OG, it's hard not to be impressed with what they pulled off here. Honestly, the entire conceit of the charade is such a funny idea, and Shelby, the woman Fischoder fancies, is such a fun character. Being so explicitly excited about being the other woman is ridiculously funny.
You are so married. So gosh damn married.
What I love most about this episode premise is that while you could argue that it's sort of about Bob selling himself out, you could also argue that he was making a huge sacrifice for his family, forgoing his most important holiday desires so that he can give them a fun play-acting Thanksgiving and with a little added security in their business with those 5 months rent. And being there in real substantial ways for your family is kind of a huge part of Thanksgiving, right? However, he sort of undercuts this sacrifice with his absinthe-driven toast to the family that basically ruins the entire charade. And what better way to end a Thanksgiving episode than with a turkey hunt, as Bob runs off with Lance and Shelby literally hunts him down. Insane ending. But it's this wild circumstance that knocks some sense into the Belchers, realizing that they really shoved Bob's favorite day of the year to the side for their own self-fulfillment.
Sorry we ruined your Thanksgiving, Dad.
We were jerks.
This isn't my favorite Bob's Giving episode, but it's such a great start to the series. It immediately establishes some of the funniest running traditions while building out a conflict that not only exemplifies the most important aspects of Thanksgiving, but the most important aspects of Bob's Burgers. Plus, it is just hilarious.
I respect myself too much not to be the other woman.
Wow, you guys are insane.
A ding, a ding.
Oh, what's that sound?
It's the gravy boat.
In the incredibly titled Turkey in a Can, we not only build on the same familial themes prevalent in the first Bob's Burgers Thanksgiving episode, but we get a sort of spooky mystery story. One thing Bob's is pretty great at is applying other sort of tones and tropes to already themed episodes. While a mystery might typically be associated with Halloween, it also fits perfectly with the story here, which actually takes place in the week leading up to Thanksgiving. Gayle is staying with the Belchers, and Bob is already prepping his turkey well in advance. And one night in, this happens.
What the? Oh my god. No!
As you might expect, this sends Bob into full paranoia, desperate to find out who is responsible for canning his beloved turkey. Most of the family thinks it's Louise, but nobody admits to the canning, and they use this premise really, really well. Not only does it send the Thanksgiving-obsessed Bob spiraling, but we get fun detective-y deduction sequences.
Or maybe Linda. Oh, sweet Linda. A long-suffering wife stuck in a bad marriage.
Poor thing.
Though the theatricality here was mostly just meant to try and clear her own name and throw accusations everywhere else, but this show does such a great job highlighting the kids' imaginations in these wild circumstances. Of course, none of this helps Bob, who cannot help but take this as seriously as anything he's ever taken seriously.
I guess I'll just never trust any of you again, forever, for as long as I live.
And oh boy, do they escalate this in such a fun way. Bob obviously continues to prep turkeys for Thanksgiving, and every night, the toilet drop happens again. It's a serial turkey canner. What is so ingenious about this plot is that it pretty explicitly pits Bob against his family, once again at this familial-focused holiday. Bob is so focused on the food preparation aspect of Thanksgiving that he forgets who he's cooking for. And as the turkey toileting happens over and over, he trusts his family less and less, growing resentful. He even cooks up a decoy turkey, putting one in the fridge and another downstairs in the restaurant to try and throw off the culprit, and he only tells Linda. Honestly, side note, one of my favorite things about Bob's Burgers is that even in the middle of this big silly storyline about a turkey continually getting dropped in the toilet, they give us these really genuine moments between characters. Bob and Linda are such a funny couple who really love each other, and even while Bob is spiraling, this is on display.
Oh, I really do need deodorant.
Yeah, you really do.
Woo,
Wow.
I stink. Put your face in it.
No.
Come on, put your face in it.
But even this decoy turkey does not work. That night there is a double canning, and Bob decides he's just gonna make a bad day of turkey because he doesn't want to ruin his favorite holiday. Okay, this episode also has this absolutely hysterical B story where since Bob's turkeys keep getting canned, he has to keep going to the store to get new ones. And at first, the guy at the meat counter sort of makes fun of Bob and belittles him for not being able to cook his turkey, but eventually he starts to think that Bob is actually coming there to see him.
Oh my God, we're doing this.
No, we're not.
Hey, what do you want to do?
I don't.
You want to go to the beach? Huh?
No, maybe. Wait, I'm straight. I mean, I'm mostly straight.
This is another example of this show just finding some hilarious nugget of comedy in a very human subplot. It's born out of the circumstances of the episode, but otherwise just has nothing to do with the rest of the story. It's all completely separate. The guy eventually decides he wants to leave his boyfriend and run away with Bob, all through these continued meat counter interactions, and it is just so funny.
Who am I kidding? You're out of my league. It would never work.
What are you talking about?
I really gotta go.
I'm gonna see you tomorrow.
This always stuck in my mind as one of the funniest Bob's Burgers Thanksgiving plot lines, and it ironically only takes place over like a few minutes in the middle of an episode that's about something entirely different. This thing also has a shockingly satisfying conclusion as well, really honing back in on the familial themes. Since he's lost so much sleep over the turkeys, Bob falls asleep at their Thanksgiving dinner, and in front of everyone, he sleepwalks the turkey over to the toilet and sits it down, canning it himself. As it turns out, he was dreaming about toilet training Tina and was acting out the motions with the turkey as though it were Tina.
Oh, it's kind of sweet. Oh my God, there goes the stuffing. Oh God, oh God.
I love what this represents as well. If you look at how this episode started, Bob was really prioritizing his own plans for Thanksgiving over any of his family's Thanksgiving desires. Sort of the inverse of last season. Tina really wanted to sit at the adults table and Bob wasn't having it. And his hyper obsession with cooking and preparing the turkey was putting a wedge between him and his family. And while that wedge was driven further and further the more times that turkey went into that toilet, the culprit was ironically Bob's own subconscious reminding him of what's most important. As you might expect, Bob started out 2 for 2 with Thanksgiving episodes.
Aw, I love my little family.
Much like the previous Thanksgiving episode, Dawn of the Peck loops in a whole additional vibe/tone and layers it on top of the Thanksgiving story. This one, even more than the mystery aspect of last season, feels like a full-on honorary Halloween episode, basically turning a massive gaggle of disgruntled turkey, geese, and ducks into holiday zombies. Imagine Hitchcock's The Birds, but it's all the stupidest looking birds, which ends up being a far cry from Linda's expectations.
It's gonna be like the running of the bulls, but cute and safe.
Basically, this year Linda is doing the Turktacular Turkey Trot, and the kids want to go to the accompanying festival, which, as you might expect, puts Bob in a really sour mood, given that Thanksgiving is his favorite holiday.
Well, fine, go. But you know what? I am not making dinner.
He's taking this pretty well.
No, you're crying.
So this thing plays out with what are initially 2 completely separate stories before they merge in a really satisfying way at the end. In one half, it's the events of the Turktacular Turkey Day Festival, and in the other, Bob just having the time of his life being alone at home.
Pretty good. Pretty good. I'll try right over left now. Yep. Also good.
And this relaxed day at home is the perfect juxtaposition to the chaos that unleashes at the turkey trot. As it turns out, what was supposed to be 300 turkeys is actually a mix of turkeys, geese, and ducks who are all incredibly disgruntled. As soon as the trot begins, chaos reigns. This not only causes huge mobs of panicked people, but traps the Belcher kids on the egg scrambler ride with Andy, Ollie, and Rudy. Most of the episode plays out like a Bob's Burgers brand of thriller/horror film. The kids have to escape an out-of-control spinning ride, and then they have to flee the wharf without being attacked by these angry birds. No, not those angry birds, these angry birds. Unsurprisingly, the whole bird scenario was the fault of the fish odor's negligence, and as per usual, they have very little interest in fixing the problem they caused.
I mean, they were screaming when I closed the gate, so I don't think so. But who's gonna believe them, right?
Oh, we're still recording.
Oh!
This episode has so many fun and funny moments. The entire stuck on the spinny ride subplot is really creative and ends with one of my favorite regular-sized Rudy moments in the entire show. Linda, Mickey, and Teddy are all hilarious in this kind of panic-ridden situation, and Bob's fun day home and obliviousness to the entire scenario plays out perfectly. After some day whiskey and singing Donna Summer, Bob realizes he is not being true to himself. So he goes to the store to get some stuff to prep a Thanksgiving dinner despite what he told his family. family. He's just too tipsy to realize that the entire town has been overrun by angry poultry. So the two plots just merge perfectly. After the gang actually makes it home, they realize they have to go save Bob at the grocery store. And Teddy's explanation of the pecking order comes back in a hilarious resolution where Linda starts pecking the birds to achieve dominance.
I'm the alpha turkey. Yeah, that's what I thought. Go stuff each other.
Even though this episode is decidedly less Thanksgiving than most of these, it still does find a way to hone in on the familial aspect. Bob realizes he still wants to cook for his family, and that family goes way out of their way to risk the zombie birds and save Bob. Plus this very funny and touching Thanksgiving toast.
Here's to Linda, queen of the turkeys. She really knows how to peck people.
While this one does deviate from the Thanksgiving theme a bit and ventures more into scaratory, it absolutely stands shoulder to shoulder with their best.
Wait, no one wants turkey?
I don't
so much.
think never, ever again.
There you go.
One thing that Bob's really takes advantage of in these Thanksgiving episodes is the versatility of the holiday as a setting. November really allows the writers full flexibility to use a variety of weather circumstances. Where many are typical fall weather, or even warm enough for a turkey trot like the previous season, this year they opted for the occasional reality that Thanksgiving takes place during a massive snowstorm. And man, does that snowy setting elevate the stakes in a really fun way, once again finding something new to put that wedge between Bob and his favorite holiday. This is also when they finally bring back the Bob's talks to his turkeys tradition.
Look at you. You don't even know how beautiful you are. That's what makes you so beautiful.
And of course, more Linda Thanksgiving songs. God, how could you ever get enough of these?
It's Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving for everybody, except for Europeans.
Alongside the big snowstorm conflict, this episode makes another really smart narrative decision for a Thanksgiving episode, putting a focus on an extended family member. Obviously, Thanksgiving is a time where families come together, and sometimes that puts you in close quarters with aunts or uncles or in-laws that you maybe aren't as fond of. And while Bob absolutely loves his family, he always struggles a bit with Linda's family. This episode puts Gayle at the forefront, making Bob's exasperation with Linda's sister pretty clear.
She also said she can't use toothpaste because she's afraid she'll get addicted.
Despite this, Bob opts to drive through the snowstorm to pick up Gayle, who sprained her ankle. I do love that even though it's made clear that Bob is not a huge fan of Gayle, he does what's best for his family, protecting Linda here from making the trip since she's not a very good driver in the snow. And the combination of Gayle's eccentricities and the ongoing snowstorm shoves that aforementioned wedge between Bob and his precious Thanksgiving. Gayle takes so long to get ready that by the time they go to leave, Bob's car has been buried by a snowplow. With no way to get the car free and Gayle hobbling on crutches, the only solution is for Bob to pull Gayle in an inflatable kiddie pool like it's a sled. Man, I cannot express how much I love this premise. Absolutely ridiculous, and such a perfectly crafted metaphor. The sister-in-law Bob dislikes is literally the baggage dragging behind him that's preventing him from enjoying his favorite holiday. And this scenario also leads to our B story this episode.
Your father's pulling your aunt through the snow because he's a hero. We're all gonna have to cook stuff.
Bob attempts to coach his family through the remaining cooking he has to do, which of course goes poorly, while he deals with Gayle in the snowstorm. The kids just make whatever they want, while Linda absolutely struggles with the turkey, butchering it really. The escalation here is incredibly funny as well, with the reveal that Gayle was faking her injury the entire time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she does that.
Bob then injures himself while trying to save Gayle's cat from a tree, and their roles reverse as Gayle drags Bob the remainder of the way home, which is a pretty nice resolution. I think this show just has such a good handle on familial relationships, even beyond the nuclear fam. Even though it's exacerbated by these ridiculous circumstances, Bob and Gayle have an incredibly realistic dynamic, where they're sort of forced to put up with and help each other despite their differences. It's a nice look at the family that comes with the family you choose, and I think it ends on a lovely note.
Bob, today you proved that no matter what, family is always there for each other, even when they drive you crazy.
Though they ultimately reveal that even Gayle's fake injury was spurred on by her own complete misunderstanding of a situation, bafflingly believing that Mr. Fronda broke up with her.
He said he was going to visit his aunt for Thanksgiving.
Wait, what? That's all he said?
Gayle, he's probably actually visiting his aunt for Thanksgiving.
Gayle might be funny, but I do not think that I would have the patience that the Belchers have. But Bob's continues to deliver great family-themed Thanksgiving episodes in new flavors each and every year. To change things up for this year's Thanksgiving episode, Bob's opted to do a school-focused story in the week leading up to the holiday itself, which is a great way to feed us something new for Turkey Day. Since the holiday is typically so family-focused, we don't often get to see the Belchers' classmates in these kinds of stories. This is also an episode that really hinges on Louise, up to one of her usual schemes at the expense of the eternally earnest Tina. Louise hates that the day before Thanksgiving, they always have to sit through Mr. Frahn's Thanksgiving plays, so she cooks up a plan. She convinces Mr. Frahn to let her produce the play with the intention of pushing it over the edge.
What if the day before Thanksgiving play is so offensive that it gets shut down? We'd all go home early!
Unfortunately, her plan for this is to convince Tina that she should genuinely turn one of her erotic holiday friend fictions into the school play. While this episode isn't quite as family-focused as some of the other Thanksgiving stories, it does deliver a great arc for Tina and a great lesson for Louise. Tina's entire play is called The Quirky Turkey, a thinly veiled story about herself, focusing on a turkey who is self-conscious because she's been referred to as quirky.
Tina, you're so quirky.
She's right, you are.
You are.
You are.
Oh my god, you really are.
Oh my god, she's like so quirky.
There are some pretty sad moments in this one. Tina thinks they found this great lead for the play who can sing, but Louise convinces Tina that she has to play the quirky turkey. So while Tina thinks that her sister is supporting her and believes in her, it's actually because Louise wants the play to go as badly as possible. This is definitely one of those episodes where Louise sets her sights on something selfishly and doesn't really care who she tramples to get it. Though, even though the entire cast is initially pretty excited for the play itself, they all mostly jump on board with Louise's half-day plan so they can spend the afternoon how they want to.
And I want to go to the mall that day to get leggings.
Yeah, for her legs.
Yes.
And Louise's plan itself is actually insane. She wants to use an air compressor to launch turkey gizzards and giblets out of the papier-mâché turkey heads, covering the audience and hopefully sending everybody home. But when it actually happens, the reality of that plan sets in.
This isn't gonna scar anyone for life, right?
I'm gonna throw up!
I think what I love most about this resolution is that despite the fact that Tina has been wronged by Louise the entire episode, she actually steps up and helps her. She A, displays genuine confidence in herself, pushing her play over the finish line successfully, and B, uses Louise's horrifying plan to improve the ending of the story, allowing the audience to appreciate it instead of be traumatized by it, and letting Louise off the hook for her selfish behavior.
I've got the guts. Do you have the guts to be yourself? You've got the guts, huh?
I'm not gonna lie, at first I did not see how they were gonna dig themselves out of this hole, but Tina's Guts song was wildly satisfying. And I guess the familial themes comes with Tina helping out her sister even when she doesn't deserve it. This is a really fun episode. It's maybe not my favorite of the Bob's Giving lineup because I'm a little more partial to the more overt family themes, but setting this at school around a play continues their streak of giving us variety in the Thanksgiving stories.
My parents are the two halves of the waffle maker.
That makes you the waffle.
For season 8, Bob's once again gives us a change of scenery for Thanksgiving, bringing the Belchers over to Teddy's house to help him last minute prepare to have guests for the holiday. And while I love the overt familial stuff in these Thanksgiving episodes, I also really love the decision to focus on Teddy this year, largely because as non-Belchers go, Teddy definitely spends the most time with Bob, Linda, and the kids. He's definitely the most featured non-family member in the entire show, and this man absolutely adores the Belchers, particularly Bob. So it's nice to have a Thanksgiving episode where the Belchers spend time with one of those friends who basically is family. It actually starts the day before Thanksgiving with Teddy panicking about his family coming over, showcasing Bob's usual tunnel vision towards his own Thanksgiving cooking plans.
Teddy, I don't know. We closed early, and I still barely have enough time to do everything I have to do for our Thanksgiving. I have a new brine I'm trying, and I was thinking about spatchcocking.
This is definitely primarily a Teddy episode, and I love the insight it gives us into his life, revealing his hoarding tendencies, which is maybe the least surprising reveal about Teddy in the show. The guy has real clear characterization.
Shouldn't we call a doctor or a TV show?
So while Linda and the kids basically try to Marie Kondo Teddy's stuff, Bob tries to give Teddy a step-by-step guide on preparing his Thanksgiving meal.
Thanksgiving is the most important meal of the year, which makes the turkey like the king of foods.
This goes reasonably well despite Teddy's clear discomfort, but with the Belchers spending so much time helping Teddy get ready for his family to come over, it prevents Bob from being able to spend the time he wants to on his own Thanksgiving. And Bob, forever the Thanksgiving obsessive perfectionist, is pretty disappointed by his own meal prep, which sets them up perfectly when Teddy absolutely fails to follow Bob's instructions.
You know what this means?
Please don't say we
have to go to Teddy's to help him with his Thanksgiving so I can redeem myself.
Oh, God.
And while this new prep goes well on Bob's end, Teddy is still reeling from the anti-hoarding of his house. They end up finding him out in the dumpster tending to his former treasure, now trash. And this is definitely where the episode shines. I mentioned that it gives us a lot of insight into Teddy as a character, and this is where we get the real substance.
Well, when I was a kid, I'd just sit between my parents so they wouldn't argue so much.
So Teddy, down in the dumpster, is trying to fix all of the things he's hoarded before they're hauled away. Not because he needs these things, but because the process of fixing is how he copes, and it represents something he sees as a failure in his life.
I'm a fixer. I fix things. I've always been a fixer. I'm gonna fix that wall for Makin soon.
The big reveal here is that Teddy's entire career and all of these tendencies stem from the trauma of his parents not working out, which he perceives as his own failure because he was the one who always sat between them to stop them from fighting. So his stress about all of the hoarding junk being hauled away isn't necessarily about the stuff itself. The trash man is a ticking clock counting down to Teddy's next failure to fix things, an extension of that trauma from his parents. This is really great stuff. Bob's truly has such human characters, even though they are so quirky and ridiculous. And this insight into what makes Teddy tick is one of their patented emotional and heartfelt revelations. And I think the episode ends on an even better note. His family can't make dinner, and so Teddy eats with the Belchers, who go ahead and have a second Thanksgiving dinner so that they can spend some time with Teddy. And Teddy gets to spend the holiday with his chosen family.
Thank you guys for all your help with my stuff, and putting up with my stuff, and making stuffing. It means a lot.
That makes you the waffle.
Fix it. We're saving the bird this year.
Where they've impressively managed to find new locations for the Thanksgiving episodes across the first 8 seasons, Season 9 continues this trend by taking Thanksgiving on the road. This is easily one of my favorite Bob's Giving episodes because it is so unique, but even though it swerves off in a different direction, it of course starts with Bob talking to his turkey.
So dumb, treating the turkey like it's a person.
Yeah, idiots. Wait, but don't you...
Shh, no, shh.
In this one, the Belchers are going to the town turkey pardoning the day before Thanksgiving, but Bob is obviously always focused on the food, remembering that they need to stop for cranberries on the way home. Honestly, I think maybe the hardest I've laughed at Bob sitting on his Thanksgiving meal high horse was this drive-by jab at Linda's mom.
I know you ate that sugary canned cranberry slop at your grandmother's that one year, because she doesn't care about anything.
But the core of this episode is that at the pardoning ceremony, the kids overhear the deputy mayor's assistant revealing that they aren't saving the pardoned turkey, Drew P. Neck, at all. They are going to kill him.
To drive a turkey to a slaughterhouse because my career in politics is going really great.
I love these stakes. It basically turns this year's episode into an ongoing chase, and it's another Thanksgiving story that challenges Bob. Bob absolutely does not care at all about this pardoned turkey. In fact, that turkey sort of represents the opposite of what Bob cares about most when it comes to Thanksgiving. Bob loves turkeys, but the dead ones, the ones that can talk to him before he cooks them up with some new gimmick each year, not the living ones with the derpy faces. But at his kids' insistence, Bob realizes that they really should save this turkey from his slaughterhouse fate, even though it is not his usual MO. There are some fun twists and turns in this one, and I particularly loved that the moment they released Drew P. Neck into the wild, they realized they put him in more danger.
Guys, I'm pretty sure that's coyotes.
Oh my god.
This episode is maybe a little meandering, but I don't even think that's a bad thing in this instance. It feels like the twists and turns are worth it for the adventure of it all, and it leads to this great Louise moment.
Get the hell away from Drew P. Neck, you sons of bitches! Ah!
Aside from the fun of this entire turkey saving sequence, can I just shout out these gorgeous fall backgrounds and locations? Some of my favorite looking scenery in the entire show for sure. Beautifully vibrant fall colors. And the resolution of the episode brings Drew P. Neck to the same farm from Stand By Gene with the two-butted goat, a pretty fitting callback. I think comedy-wise, the funniest thing about this episode is just the complete incompetence of the deputy mayor, and the fact that he tries so hard to use his role to be imposing, but absolutely fails at every step.
Oh, they printed it!
Oh, I guess Cunningham doesn't have as much pull at the paper as he thought he did.
Yeah, he's not the mayor.
But I think the best part of this episode, in terms of the whole familial Thanksgiving messaging, comes from Bob's actions here. Though it was so fundamentally opposed to what his usual Thanksgiving motivations are, the fact that Bob helped that turkey and fulfilled his kids' desires actually led to an amazing experience for him, getting the freshest cranberries from that farmer's cranberry bog. Just a top-tier Bob experience that only happened because he decided to push his own Thanksgiving plans to the side for his family. Great stuff.
You're a true gift from heaven, and I love you.
This is definitely a candidate for my favorite Bob's Giving episode. Just fully leans into the themes I love most from these holiday stories. And it all once again starts with Bob's singular hyper-focus on that Thanksgiving meal. This year, Bob has finally made it to the top of the wait list for what he believes is the best turkey that money can buy.
I'm not driving any faster with a Riverbrook Lake Farms heritage turkey in the car, Len.
Can I just shout out how funny the name Riverbrook Lake Farms is? 3 bodies of water and 1 farm name. Great writing. But once again, Bob's obsessive focus on a Thanksgiving dilemma leads him to really neglect the family that is truly the most important part of the holiday. And even before the dilemma, he's pretty dismissive of Tina's one Thanksgiving plan for the family, the gratitude tree, where everybody writes things they're grateful for on the leaves.
Leaf ceremony?
Yeah, we read our leaves aloud and take turns taping them to the branches.
This sets the stage for what is one of my favorite moments in any of these Thanksgiving episodes, but we'll get there. The major dilemma is forecasted in the very good title this year. The Belcher's gas is out on Thanksgiving and won't be fixed for a couple of days. Perfect timing now that Bob has his never-frozen, top-of-the-line Riverbrook Farms heritage turkey. And after much panicking and desperation, Bob devises one of his dumbest plans ever. He builds a fire in the alley so he can slowly cook his turkey over it, which he can only do with his family's full help and attention.
We have to keep this bird hot for only 4 or 5 hours.
What?
5 hours? We'll be fully grown women by then.
This silly-ass plan has so many funny twists and turns. The fire department shows up and tells Bob to put the fire out, and honestly, while I do understand it's their job, they are really rude about it given that the city messed up their gas and ruined Thanksgiving, but Bob just fully ignores them anyways, intent on finishing his turkey. And he's willing to burn literally anything so he can cook this turkey, forcing the kids to continually retrieve more fuel for the fire. This leads to what I think is a really great moment that showcases Bob's shortcomings in this scenario. The kids go to the park to find more wood, and when there are shockingly few sticks, they put a ton of effort to roll this massive log over to the fire, which obviously is not going to help Bob because it's way too big to burn, but he shows absolutely no appreciation for the effort his kids put forth.
You guys were supposed to get sticks. Where are the sticks?
This is a mega stick. What's happening?
Would you like a suggestion where to stick this log?
Bob's increasing desperation and lack of appreciation for his family's time and help is really what makes this episode big climax hit so well. As Bob desperately tries to keep the embers lit and keep his turkey dreams alive, Tina hands him one last thing to burn: her gratitude tree.
What the hell am I saying? Oh my God, I've gone nuts, haven't I?
Just a little. Or a lot.
I'm not gonna burn your tree, Tina.
Oh, thank God.
Bob's Thanksgiving tunnel vision is obviously a major motif across these episodes, but I think this one might be my favorite. Bob is literally willing to burn anything around him to make sure his special turkey is ready for T-Day. An apt metaphor for that aforementioned tunnel vision, honestly. And it's not until he almost burns the gratitude tree that he realizes he himself has truly been lacking in gratitude. Oh, and then the fire department comes back and he knocks the turkey straight into the fire, burning it to a crisp. And it isn't until Bob verbally acknowledges what is most important that his Thanksgiving wish is actually granted.
I am grateful for all of you, my family.
Aw, family.
Huh.
I mean, that one's kind of obvious.
Once Bob goes to throw the turkey out, he peels back the burnt skin and realizes that it is perfectly cooked.
Oh my God, it was delicious.
Gimme.
Let me try.
It's nice when these episodes wait until the characters have learned their lesson to reward them with the thing they wanted all along. This is a top tier Bob's Giving episode.
Turkey, I need you beside me.
This is a wildly different Thanksgiving entry for Bob's Burgers, opting for anthology storytelling. The Simpsons is obviously known for doing these on Halloween with their Treehouse of Horrors, but what makes Bob's Burgers anthology stories so special is that they tend to find incredibly unique ways to frame these stories, and also do a great job making the stories feel like an extension of whichever character is telling them. This one kinda nails both, but first it starts by just giving the quickest and most efficient plot establishing dialogue ever.
Oh, and by the way,
way, Gene has the stomach flu and he's barfing and has crazy diarrhea, so he's spending Thanksgiving in the apartment bathroom, and we all have to use the bathroom in the restaurant.
I also think giving Gene the focus for this Thanksgiving episode is a really nice change of pace that I'm surprised we didn't see happen sooner, considering how much that kid adores food. Being too sick to eat Bob's Thanksgiving spread is a fate worse than death for Gene. In fact, he even serenades his family about it.
What's that hiding in your hole? Some stuffing for my heart and soul.
I have got to give Eugene Merman props for this singing performance here. Gene sings a lot in this show, but for this song in particular, you can really hear how damn sad he is through his vocals. Really impressive and a really great Thanksgiving conflict for Gene. But this also works really well with Bob's Thanksgiving obsession, showing that he maybe took Gene for granted when nobody else in the family is particularly jazzed about his quote-unquote innovative menu stuff.
I really wish Gene wasn't sick. He was so excited about all this new food.
So the framing device for the anthology stories here is that Louise and Tina are trying to tell Gene stories that will make him hate food, so that he isn't so bummed about missing out on Thanksgiving dinner. And they do this by basically combining food with old action movies, in what I can really only describe as an excuse to make the sweatiest food puns, which, let's be honest, is Bob's Burgers' entire MO, so this tracks. Louise starts off with a parody of Predator, which is of course called The Breadator, in which Bob plays a predator made out of bread who also turns his victims into bread. It's incredibly silly, but pretty funny. I particularly love the detail that the Breadator's butt is made out of hot cross buns. That's good stuff. Tina's sweaty action movie pun is Pear Force One, a parody of Air Force One, where a group of pears hijack the president's plane. But I'm gonna be honest, there was a huge missed opportunity here to call these pear terrorists terrorists. This one had some of my biggest laughs in the entire episode too, like when President Gene was worried he wouldn't be able to watch the Kaminsky Method on his flight.
Of course, sir. We have all the episodes streaming on VHS because it's 1997.
This story also has Gene insisting that his wife in the story needs to be Linda, which is very weird, but also very Gene. He really loves his mom. I do think that the highlight of the episode is how the last story ties everything to the story of the framing device. Bob realizes that Gene ate this 2-week-old chicken parm in the fridge, so he doesn't have stomach flu, he has food poisoning. And he wrote his action movie parody entirely around this, Parmageddon.
We need to go up there and blow up that big piece of chicken parm.
Basically the plot of Armageddon, but instead of Bruce Willis sacrificing himself to blow up the asteroid, Gene has to eat an old chicken parm the size of Texas. It's a nice way for Bob to reveal to Gene that he knows what happened, and Gene fesses up.
I was embarrassed that I basically ate garbage. I just love to eat.
Bob's Burgers is generally pretty impressive with its anthology stories, but they still to me are usually among my least favorite episodes, mostly just due to personal taste. And even though this one did a great job delivering an emotional character-focused story through these action food movie parodies, it's a bit lower on my Bob's Giving favorites list. But I think that really just speaks to how great these episodes are, because it still delivered some really lovely family moments.
And as soon as you pass that sip test, I'll eat dinner with you.
In the tradition of finding new locations for their Thanksgiving specials, this year the Belchers go to volunteer at the old folks' home before preparing their own Thanksgiving meal, which is a pretty fun setting for a holiday. And miraculously, Bob is given the opportunity to prepare Thanksgiving dinner for the entire home when their chef goes into labor, which might sound like a nightmare surprise for most, but this is Bob we're talking about.
Hi, Kitchen. I'm Bob. Let's get into it. No, that sounded lame. Sorry, Kitchen.
It's okay.
I love how they started to expand Bob's talking as the turkey compulsion beyond the turkey itself. In this one, he talks as the kitchen and also a whole array of side dishes. But this episode splits the family into 3 groups. Linda gets stuck with Sergeant Bosco and his mother, which I have to admit is kind of the odd story out. It has some funny moments, but it's pretty thin, and I think it was mostly meant to separate Linda from Bob. Tina, Gene, and Louise plan to help Zeke put on an in-person Thanksgiving Day parade for the folks at the home since their cable has gone out, but Louise gets roped into helping Bob prepare the food, which is honestly such a perfect circumstance to build familial conflict on Thanksgiving, given Bob's hyper-obsessive food tendencies on T-Day. Bob and Louise have a really fun dynamic that creates great conflict, because they're both a little bit controlling in different ways. Obviously, this comes out of Bob most for Thanksgiving food preparation, but Louise in general doesn't like to be in situations she doesn't have much control over, which makes her sous chef position really difficult. However, Louise does pretty immediately find something she's stoked to do in the kitchen.
It shoots fire when you press this button.
Let me see.
Louise basically immediately falls in line when the prospect of torching the marshmallow on the sweet potato casserole is put in front of her. Unfortunately, Bob's T-Day tendencies prevent him from being a good teacher, and anytime Louise struggles to do something in the kitchen efficiently, rather than show her a better way, he takes over and just does it for her. Again, I just think this is a perfect way to build conflict between Bob and Louise, who generally have a great relationship, but their personalities still have tendencies that clash pretty substantially. And I'm sure you could guess what exactly brought this food-based conflict to its boiling point.
Captain Casserole reporting for duty.
Oh, it's just that we only get one shot at this, Louise, and if we don't get it right, it's ruined.
I do think that while I love this A story with Bob and Louise, which sets up a perfect familial conflict within a great Thanksgiving scenario, the whole IRL parade B story is maybe a little lacking. It has some pretty funny moments, like Tina play acting as a reporter before the parade, and I love Zeke getting more involved in any story, but it definitely feels like it was lacking impact in the narrative, even in how they tried to sort of merge the A and B stories with Bob's apology. But admittedly, even though it felt like a haphazard combination of these sides of the plot, Bob's apology to Louise is a great moment.
I pictured us bustling around in there, high-fiving with spatulas, but I was way too much of a cook and not enough of a dad.
Man, that is just an all-time great Bob apology. What a good line. I've got to do a video about Bob and Louise's relationship one day, and Bob really makes up for his blunder with this final beat.
Hey, Louise, there's one more thing I need your help with in the kitchen.
What's that?
I'm only slightly torn on this episode because it pairs a B story I'm mostly indifferent to with one of my all-time favorite A stories, but man, that A story is truly special.
3, 2, 1, roll with just one goal.
We have reached the final Bob's Giving entry, at least for now, Season 13's Putz Giving. While this is a very good episode, I do think it maybe strays a bit too far from the Thanksgiving of it all, but it's still great. In this one, Tina is trying to figure out how to ask her parents if she can go to Tammy's bonfire where high school boys will be in attendance. But while trying to bring this up, the family decides to go on an impromptu Thanksgiving Day mini golf excursion so they can take advantage of an expiring coupon.
This is my new home.
I love the way this episode is structured, basically having Tina bounce between the A and B stories, acting as the bridge that connects everything. On one side, Louise and Jean are desperately trying to get their golf balls in 3 holes simultaneously to make this mini golf Yeti's head, arms, and legs all move at the same time. I think what I love about this side of the story is that it is such a kid thing to want to see. It's so inconsequential, but kids are often obsessed with inconsequential stuff like this. And that's what makes the conflict with Tina work so well. As the eldest Belcher, Tina has her eyes set on something that is pointedly more grown up in this episode, going to a bonfire where older kids will be hanging out. While the whole Yeti scheme might have seemed fun to her in any other circumstance, today it feels meaningless and not worth risking getting into trouble as she's trying to stay on Bob and Linda's good side. It's just such a great age-based conflict for the Belcher kids. Of course, Tina's pleas to her parents generally go ignored because that entire B story is focused on Linda chasing the hole-in-one dragon. This B story itself is actually also inconsequential, but it is just so funny. They start off by showing Linda brushing off her own terrible golf skills, faking her score.
I don't think you did, but fine.
No, I did.
And then when she miraculously gets a hole-in-one, she obsessively tries to get another and has a miserable time because of it. It's incredibly silly, but it's vintage Bob and Linda, with Linda just flying off the rails and Bob putting up with it in a dry but funny way.
Yeah, Tommy Two Strokes. Get ready for Linda, look at my hole-in-one.
Just as long as you don't permanently change your name to that.
But where this episode really shines is in Tina's relationship to Louise and Jean, which is obviously going to continue to shift and change as she gets older, but she'll never throw her siblings under the bus. After the pair actually break the Yeti, Tina still comes up with a last-ditch plan to fix it for them, putting her own desires at risk for her sister. It's a really great sentiment, and while it works for a moment and they have a chance to get off scot-free, Louise actually decides to come clean. It's a really nice resolution where Louise grows up a little bit, and then Tina recognizes that she would never want to ruin her relationship with her siblings.
Jean and I shouldn't have been messing with the legs.
It was an accident, and it could have happened to anyone. I mean, dancing Yeti is a lot of moving parts. A lot that can go wrong.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So while I do think this is just generally a really great episode, with classic Bob and Linda shenanigans and a heartfelt, impactful Tina and Louise story, I do maybe get a little stuck on the fact that it doesn't really feel like it needed to be a Thanksgiving episode. The fact that it takes place on Thanksgiving barely factors in at all outside of Bob trying to get home to cook, and it honestly feels like they could have just written this for any other time of the year. So as a Thanksgiving episode, I sort of dock it a few points, but as a Bob's Burgers episode in general, there's almost nothing to complain about. It's funny, it's heartfelt, and it ends with one of my favorite Tina and Louise moments in the entire show.
Louise, I know we're not always going to want to do the same things, but I'll always have your back.
Same here.
So there it is, all 11 Bob's Burgers Thanksgiving episodes so far. These are fan favorites for a reason. As I mentioned over and over again in the video, they just exemplify the most important core aspects of this show. Familial conflicts where characters learn to appreciate and understand each other better, wrapped in food puns and turkey humor. Really some of the best stuff the series has to offer. Hope you enjoyed this video. Comment below with your favorite Bob's Burgers Thanksgiving episode, why it's your fave, and you know what? Give me your entire ranking. Happy Thanksgiving.
I stay mellow watching Johnny Two Cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny Two Cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.